So someone asked me if I could talk about the actual process of entry into Samadhi. What actually happens as we're meditating, as the mind enters Samadhi, and why does it enter Samadhi? So normally we sit down to meditate, and usually we would have an object that we would be focusing our attention on. And generally what happens is that we get distracted. We'll get distracted by something, realize we got distracted, and then come back to the object again. Again we get distracted. Usually thoughts distract us, usually memories, or it could be emotions, it could be sounds in the room. Whatever the distraction is, when we notice, we come back to our object of meditation. Now, for most people, most of the time, their mind is in quite an agitated state. We might not notice this until we sit down to meditate. If you hear people say that they can't meditate, what they mean is that when they sat down to meditate, what they experienced was the agitation of their own mind. And for a lot of people, that agitation is so strong that it could put them off meditation practice altogether. So what causes that agitation? Fundamentally, there's two things that cause the agitation of the mind. One is desire, wanting something that isn't there. And the opposite of that is aversion, when there's something there but we don't want it to be there. So, for example, we might get a pain in our knee, we don't want the pain to be there, there's aversion, there's an agitation in the mind. Or we don't feel peaceful and we want to feel peaceful, that desire arises, and that creates an agitation. There's something lacking and we want it, and that agitates the mind. So desire on the one hand and aversion on the other hand. Another thing that agitates the mind is clinging or attachment. If we do get something we want, we often want to hold on to it. Okay, if that peace does arise, then we don't want it to go. So we're holding on to it. That actually agitates the mind. And there's another process that's often operating which doesn't actually agitate the mind, but it really constricts the mind. And that's a process called identification. It's the me and the mine. This is me, this is mine, these are my ideas, these are my beliefs, these are my memories, this thing happened to me. And that contracts our consciousness, contracts the mind. So for most of us, most of the time, the mind is quite contracted and quite agitated. And people sit down to meditate and they feel that contraction, they feel that agitation, and it's disturbing. And a lot of the losing awareness of our meditation object is actually caused by that process of contraction and agitation. We simply want to move away from that, and the way that the mind copes in that situation is by getting lost in thoughts or feelings or memories and so on. But as we continue our meditation practice, that doesn't continue forever. As the mind becomes more peaceful and more still, we actually start to see that agitation process happening and how it affects us, and we see that contraction process happening and how that affects us. And we start to not believe it, we start to not go along with it. We see what happens when we want something that we haven't got and how that makes us feel. We simply stop doing it. We see what happens when we want to get rid of something that is there and how that makes us feel, and we simply stop doing it. We also see what happens when we try to identify with things that we're actually not. We try to identify with a memory. That's not our memory, and that's not who or what we are. It's just something that we're aware of. We try to identify with a feeling. That's just a feeling that we're aware of. It's not who or what we are. So that process of identification starts to fall away, and then there are simply the objects. The feeling might still be there, but there's no identification with it. There's no wanting to hold on to it. There's no wanting to push it away. And when we come into this state, this is an equanimous state of mind, it's a balanced state of mind, it's a free state of mind, when there's no aversion, there's no desire, there's no attachment, there's no identification. When we're simply aware of things as they are, in a very pure state, in their very pure form, that's when the mind transcends. And that's when we enter Samadhi. Now, nothing fundamentally changes. Everything simply is just as it was. But instead of being obsessed with the objects of the mind and the objects of the senses, we suddenly notice that the mind is actually pure and vast and expansive, and that we are pure awareness within which everything exists, within which everything arises, everything falls away. So that's the process of entering Samadhi. It doesn't necessarily happen during meditation. It could happen just going out for a walk, sitting down under a tree, feeling content, feeling calm, feeling peaceful. We can enter Samadhi like that. It could happen actually in any moment. It does tend to happen more, at least initially, in moments when we're peaceful, calm, centered, equanimous. These factors tend to be present, at least in the early stages of entering Samadhi. Eventually someone could be in any situation and be in Samadhi, but that takes quite a lot of practice.